So we're going to rank the concealer powders and the, no, we ain't ranking nothing. We ain't doing it. We're not doing that. Hi, my name is Jackie, and this is my channel. Welcome. In today's video, we are going to be talking about my top 5 powders for setting down my concealer and my top 5 powders for setting my foundation or just a finishing powder. So I'm not really ranking these powders. I'm just telling you what my top 5 is for underneath the eye and my top 5 face powders are. So if you're interested in seeing the powders that I have pulled together, then let's jump into the video. Now, if you guys saw my powder collection video, then you know I have a lot of powders. And since that video, I have added a few more to my collection. And I have my eye on a few more. But I just wanted to bring you my top 5 that I currently have in my collection. So let's just jump in. But I do want to say that I am not ranking these powders. These are just my top 5. I cannot rank these powders, you guys, because I truly love them. I have tried before I started filming this tonight. I just can't do it. So I'm just going to bring you my top 5 in each category. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the powders that I love to use to set down my concealer. Now, let me tell you a few tricks that I have learned, because you know that a couple of months ago I was telling you guys that my under eyes were acting a fool. They just were looking horrible. So a couple of tricks that I have found. Number 1 is I'm sorry. Now it's probably after 10 o'clock and the dogs are outside cutting up. Okay, so I forgot where I was because the dogs started barking and I had to get up and investigate. But I think I was saying I wanted to talk to you guys about a couple of tips for my under eyes that I have learned to make my powder look good. Okay, tip 1, what I have learned is that after I have my foundation on, I try not to bring the foundation up really far up underneath my eyes because I don't want it to look cakey. So once I put the concealer on, I'll go ahead and blend my concealer out, and then I won't go straight in with powder. I find that if I let the concealer dry down a little bit, that helps. That helps to avoid the cakey look for my under eyes. So I'll try not to bring the foundation up too close underneath my under eyes. I'll go in with my concealer. Happen to have this one here. I'll go in with my concealer and then I'll just let it dry down just a little bit. And I know a lot of you will go in with your powder right away to keep the creasing at a minimal. But for me, I like to let it dry down just a little bit so it doesn't go ahead and look cakey when I go in with the powder. And so for tip 2, what I have learned is that once I go in with the powder, then after I have set it down with the powder, I'll go in with a brush. I like to use this Fenty Beauty brush, and I also have the Real Techniques brush. So once I have the powder on and I've blended it in, tapped it in, I will still go in with a brush and make sure I'm dusting it away and it's blended in really well underneath my under eyes. So I'll go in and just make sure I still don't have any powder hanging out. I want to go ahead and blend it in really well. And the third tip for me is that I'll notice that when my base is done and I'm ready to spray my face, that I have been spraying my face too closely. Because I've noticed when I'll look at my face before I spray it. You know, yes, I need the powders and everything melted into the skin, but my under eyes are looking good. I'll go in and spray in my face. I mean saturate it, spray it really good. And I'll go to work. Maybe an hour will go by, I'll look in the mirror and it looks like I have streaks. And I know some of you will spray your face and then go in with your beauty sponge again and just blend it in. I've done that too, but I'll still looks like it's already broken apart. It looks like it has streaks in it. So now what I do is I'll take my setting spray, pretend like this is my setting spray, and I'll hold it back. And then I'll spray my face. I used to just spray it up close, but now I'll try to hold it back and spray it and not oversaturate it, so I don't have those streaks underneath my under eyes or just on my base in general. So these are the tips that I'm trying to remember to do every day, and so far it's been working for me. So with all that said, let's go ahead and see which under eye powders are amongst my favorite. Now the first one I want to talk about, and remember, I am not ranking these are just my favorite. The first one is the Black Radiance True Complexion Loose Setting Powder, and this is a banana powder, and I do like this so much. Again, when my under eyes were acting a fool, this powder came to the rescue. It put me back in check and my under eyes started looking good again. So again, this is just a yellow banana powder, and I don't know if you can swatch a banana powder, but we'll try. And when I say that it is so silky, and I think that's the key thing that did it for my under eyes, that when I put this powder on, it just like blurred and made everything so silky, so smooth, and my under eyes look really good. And so this powder, definitely, I put it in my Shop My Stash, and I didn't want to take it out because up until then, everything I was using just wasn't panning out. And I think, again, it was some of the techniques that I was using. So this just came to the rescue, and I really like it. Not to mention that this powder by Black Radiance is definitely affordable. Now the next powder is a powder that I've had in my Shop My Stash for the entire month of August. And it's the one that I actually have underneath my eyes today. And it is the Huda Beauty. This powder is in the shade Kanafa. And when they offered this as a mini or as a trial, if you spend so many dollars, you can get this one for free. I jumped all over it because the YT was always raving about this powder. The YT was always talking about it. I was so curious. A lot of people used it for baking, and I don't bake, and so I was kind of hesitant at the same time. You know, is this going to be like a really drying powder, or is, you know, is the formula going to be so dry that it's going to make my under eyes look really bad? But I must say, when I first tried it, I was okay with it. I wasn't like a huge fan, sir. Excuse me. I will say when I first tried, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I really had a hard time forming an opinion about it. I thought it was just okay. So again, for the entire month of August, I've been using it. And let me tell you, I was able to start wetting my sponge, dipping it in the powder. Oh, first off, let me show you what Kanafa looks like. I don't know where I'm be swatching all these powders. Kanafa is kind of like a yellow, or looks like this on the finger, on my finger. And it's kind of like a, yeah, you can see it better right here. Kind of yellowing, kind of orangey yellow. So what I've been doing with this powder, when I get ready in the morning, my sponge is already wet, dry, because I put my foundation and stuff on, but I'll take the sponge and I'll dip in, just like I was telling you. Then I'll tap, and then I'll start low, and then I'll just bring it up underneath the under eyes. Then I'll take my brush, either one, and then I'll make sure that there's no powder sitting there, and I'll just blend it in just to make sure. And like I said, I've been using this powder almost every single day. And I did pull another powder for my Shop My Stash, but it has hardly gotten any use at all. This has been my go-to powder for almost the entire month of August. And when they say this powder will hold you down, it does. It just keeps your under eyes so matte looking. And I've had this powder on today since, no, I only worked half a day today. I'm having some renovations done to my house, so I only worked half a day today. So I've had this powder on. I didn't go to school with any makeup on, but I think I started getting ready for the pharmacy probably around 2 o'clock. And it is now, can't see all that, maybe about 10:30-ish. So this has been on my eyes for a long time, and I hardly have any creasing going on. So this definitely will hold you down. So I see what the hype was about this powder, and it's a good one. I do like it a lot. Now the next powder is a powder that I used to hear a lot of hype about. And until then, I was still kind of new with foundations, concealers, and all that jazz. I was still new to it. And I couldn't really find a powder to make my under eyes look like everybody else's on YouTube, how smooth and how good it looked. I just couldn't find one at that time. And I think I saw Andrea Renee talking about this powder on her channel, and she was raving about it. And people still talk about this, because I think I saw another YouTuber talking about this powder the other day, and she was saying that she went onto the Too Faced website and picked up a couple more because, this powder is going away. And so this is the Too Faced Peach Perfect Mattifying Translucent Powder. And like I said, I hadn't found the powder that looked good under my eyes when I first started until this powder right here came along. This powder worked out so well. First, comes with a little stopper. Still has the peach scent. And it's not it says it's a translucent, but it's not like a white translucent. It does have like a hint of color to it. Let's see if I can swatch this one. So it's not a stark white. It does have like a kind of a peach tint to it. I don't know if you guys will be able to see that. But when I tell you, this one is so fine. And again, it's very velvety. It's so silky underneath the under eyes. My under eyes looked great for the first time when I started my makeup journey. My under eyes looked so good. And so this is like a go-to powder for me. I mentioned the Black Radiance, but initially this was like a go-to powder when I first started out, and I still to this day love using this powder. So I was very tempted to go, and when I heard that this powder was going away, I was very tempted to just go and buy a few backups. But, because I have so many powders, that always keeps me in check, kind of, about buying more and more powders. And a lot of times we buy backups and we move on to something else, and we don't ever use the backups. So I didn't do it. But this would definitely be a powder that I would buy a backup for. If I needed a backup, this would be it. Next is this Laura Mercier Translucent Setting Powder. Now, this was another goodie. I received this in my Allure Beauty box. And I think, now this one says translucent, but like I said, it does have a hint of color to it. When I saw this translucent powder, I was afraid of this powder. I was like, and this isn't a stark white one actually. It does have a little hint of a color to it. Let me see if I can swatch this one. Let's see. I'm just going to try to do it right here. It's not stark white, but it does have a hint of color. But when I saw this, I think this was my most translucent powder ever. And I did not know what I was going to end up looking like. I was like, I had heard so much about Laura Mercier, but I was not ready. Your girl was not ready for this translucent powder. I was just like, oh no. But fortunately, I've never, you know, I say this all the time, I've never been heavy-handed with my products. So I went in very gingerly with this powder just to, you know, kind of set it down underneath my under eyes. And it worked out great. I don't think it was too stark looking. It just works. It made my under eyes look good. It doesn't feel drying. If, like I said, it feels smoothing underneath my under eyes. And like I said, I do not think that this shade is too stark. It works for women of color, but I was scared of this powder. I gotta tell you. I'm glad I have it in my collection now. I like it so much that I went and got the brown shade in this color. What is it called? Dark brown? It's translucent medium brown. So I picked that shade up because I like this one so much. And when I realized that they had a skin tone that I can set down my foundation with, because I like this one so much, I picked the other one up as well. So we're down to my last powder. And I picked this one up, first of all, again, I heard Andrea Renee talking about this Charlotte Tilbury powder and how she was loving it for setting her under eyes. And I picked this powder up when, again, my under eyes, they were just acting really finicky. And I was just looking for something that was going to make my concealer look good again and make my under eyes look smoothing. And this powder was no longer for sale on Charlotte Tilbury's site. It was no longer for sale. Sir? It was no longer for sale on Charlotte Tilbury's site or Sephora, but I did find this powder in the shade 3 Dark on Amazon. So I went ahead and picked it up, and this was the first time I had ever used Charlotte Tilbury's powder. And again, this is in the shade 3 Dark. I don't know who's dark, because this ain't dark. But that's what Charlotte says, 3 Dark. And I like the way it looked under my under eyes. I haven't really used it. I've used it as an all-over face powder. I've used it underneath my under eyes as well, but I haven't reached for this too much lately. But I do know that when I did, it looked flawless. I don't know. I think it's just that I like loose setting powders more than I like compacts. I think that's why I just haven't reached for this one as much. But yeah, let me swatch it. Let me swatch this dark shade for you. And we'll swatch it right here. You can hardly see it, but it's right here. Kind of blends in really nice into the skin. It does blend in very well. It looks very blurring, very silky, smooth looking. I just don't reach for it that often because, again, I'm just so used to using loose powders. But I think I am going to reach for this or grab onto this a little bit more often. I just forgot about it, honestly, because it gets buried being in my bin with all my powders. So yeah, I'm going to pull this out because, like I said, I did like the way it looked, and it came at a time when my under eyes were just very finicky. So all of these powders, all 5 of them, are my definite go-to powders for setting down my concealers. And I am so glad. I wouldn't take any of these out of my collection. I wouldn't declutter not a single one of these. These top 5 powders are my go-tos above all others for my under eye. Now let's talk about my complexion powders. Like I said, I have a finishing powder and I just have setting powders. We're not talking about any powder foundations. I'm only talking about setting powders or finishing powders. Okay, so with that in mind, since we were talking about Charlotte Tilbury, let's go ahead and pick her up again. And this time I have the shade 4 Deep. And this is what 4 Deep looks like in comparison. Let's just hold them up here together. Okay, remember this is, ugh, my hand's going all in it. This is 3 Deep and 4 Deep. You can definitely see a difference. But to say that they're deep, I wouldn't say that they're deep. But this is a wonderful, like I said, I've used this to set all over the face as well, but this looks so good when you set down your makeup. This looks so good. Same attributes as this one, very smoothing, very blurring. It's just a wonderful finishing powder, and I like this one a lot. You guys already know the deal on Charlotte Tilbury powders, so I don't need to spend a whole lot of time talking about it. This is just a great powder, and I like that it's really not deep because, you know, I always say I don't like to change the shade or the look of my foundation unless I'm trying to. If I get something that's too light, then I may get a powder or use a powder that has a little bit of color to it. But normally I like the shades of my foundation and I just want to set them down. I don't want to change the shade or the tone of it. So this works great for that. Next is one of my all-time favorites, and I'm not ranking these, I'm just letting you know, one of my all-time favorites. And again, it's a product by Too Faced, and this is the Too Faced Born This Way Ethereal Setting Powder. Now, who did I hear rave about this? She just uploaded a video, not, what was it, this week? Tiff J, I think. She was the first one that I heard talking about the Ethereal Setting Powder. And she talked so highly about it that she made me want to get it. And it took me a long time to get it because it wasn't cheap, but I like it. And again, comes the same way with the little stopper to keep your powder in place. And you guys know I use this powder all the time. I have the shade Translucent Medium because I didn't want the Translucent Deep because, again, I wanted to set down my foundation with it, and I didn't want to change the color of my foundation, so I wanted to get the medium, and I love this powder. I have this powder on my face today. Yes, I have this powder on my face today. Now, the other one has that peachy smell to it. So it seems like I smell a little something with this one, but it's definitely not the peach scent. So this one is just a very smoothing, yet again, very smoothing, very silky powder that just keeps you matte, not matte all day, but it just keeps you matte. I do touch up with this powder, but I just like the way that it looks on the skin. So this is definitely a love, and I do have a backup of this. Long story, it was accidental, but I do have one. Next is my Anastasia Beverly Hills powder, and this is in the shade Deep Peach. Now, I was on a run with this one. I was using this like nobody's business until I picked up this, but I do like this powder a lot. Let me see if I can swatch this one. This is, you know, no, what did I say this was? Deep Peach. Again, this is what it looks like, and let's see if we can get a swatch of this one. Here we go. Now, one thing that I will say about this powder is that it's not as finely milled as some of my other ones, but I like this powder. I like that this one does have a little hint of color, so I try to pair it with foundations that may need that. It looks good on the skin, but it just sets my foundation down nicely. It just looks good on the skin. So for me, like I said, it's not a finely milled one, but it doesn't look heavy. It doesn't look thick, doesn't look cakey, and it doesn't just sit on top of the skin. It just blends in very nicely. I'm not sure, because I haven't used it in a little while, and I usually use a pore filler. So I was going to say, I'm not sure what it does. Can't remember what it does for my pores, but nothing stands out. So I would have to say it looks good on my pore area. But like I said, I fill in my pores when I do my makeup. So this, I'm glad I have it. Definitely love the shade Deep Peach. Was very unsure of the shade when I first picked it up because I wasn't sure it would work for me. And then I saw, I had ordered it, hadn't gotten here yet, and then I saw Amber Pachalok, I think is how you say her last name. She had this powder, and she had the Deep Peach as well. And then I was like, okay, I think I got the right shade. So it turned out to be a perfect match for me, and I'm so happy with it. Okay, so that leaves 2 more powders in my collection to talk about. And I promise this is not, you know, sometimes I just gravitate to brands. But I promise this is not a Too Faced video. But just like I like the Peach Perfect, and this is in translucent, I also like the Peach Perfect. And this is in the shade Translucent Caramelized Peach. And it kind of reminds me of the Deep Peach by Anastasia Beverly Hills. And we'll just go ahead and swatch it. With so many powders, I can't get around to. I don't use them, especially my favorites, nearly as much. But this is what this looks like. Smells so good. And I'm going to swatch it right next to the Deep Peach. So there is a difference. But like I said, you can tell this one isn't very finely milled. And then compared to this one by Too Faced, definitely is more finely milled than the Anastasia Beverly Hills. And this does have a hint of color, not too overwhelming. And just like I sang the praises of this one, same thing goes for this one. Nothing different, just a different shade. Love it a lot. And the last powder up for me to discuss is by Fenty Beauty. I was so excited to get this powder. I actually had 2 smaller size powders, and then and they were all in the same shade. Then I picked up this bigger one, and I just kept dumping the smaller ones into the bigger container because I didn't want to have all those loose powders. So I had the same shade, so I just kept dumping them in there until I got it finally all into this one. And I have the shade Nutmeg. So that's probably why this powder looks like it never went anywhere. It's just because I had the 2 smaller ones. This is what my Nutmeg shade looks like. And let me see if I can get a swatch of this one. Not much color. Let me see. Here we go. There, this is what it looks like. Ugh, feels just like it's gliding over my skin. Here it is right here. There, you can see it. This one I said is so finely milled, and this one definitely is. Now, I always tell the story of when I used this powder for the very first time. I opened it up, dumped some out, and you can just see it floating in the air. This powder feels so lightweight, looks so good on the skin, and it just sets your makeup beautifully. This, I'm trying to think, this was like maybe my second or third Fenty Beauty purchase, and I love this powder. Has the little Fenty Beauty initials right in the top of it, and it just looks flawless on the skin. This powder is just so luxe looking, so beautiful. If you wanted to keep it on your beauty table or on display, it looks so good, and it just finishes off your makeup beautifully. It has such a nice finish. This is a setting powder, it's not a finishing powder, but I wear it on top of my foundation to finish it and to set it. Just looks so good on the skin. So this definitely was a worthwhile purchase. I guess you could say I had this powder 3 times because, like I said, I had the 2 small ones that I kept dumping into here, and then I bought the full size powder. So this, you know, I really enjoy it and I like it a lot. This just came out the box as a winner, and I really enjoy it, and I think it just looks so good on my skin. So this Fenty Beauty powder is definitely a winner. If you haven't tried it, I would definitely try it out. That's it, you guys. Those are all the powders that I wanted to talk to you about for today's video. My under eye setting powders and my face powders. So I hope you have enjoyed today's video. This was a lot of fun bringing you the different types of powders that I love to use for my skin type, which is combo. I have a oily T-zone, but the rest of my face or skin is normal. So if you did enjoy today's video, please consider subscribing to my channel, giving this video a thumbs up, and ringing the notification bell. It just lets you know each and every time that I upload a video. And share the channel because you know I don't mind. And lastly, please know that you're always welcomed and wanted here on my channel. And with that said, thank you guys so much for tuning into tonight's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody, and have a great night. Bye.